Yes, sounds and color and pictures from Tanzania. And that's the music from Tanzania, famous traditional music from Tanzania. Let's see if we have Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi, Dr. Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi on the line in Tanzania. Dr. Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi, are you there?
Yes, indeed. How are you, Dean?
Whoa, yes, there we are, where we are. Technology works. I've got technicians and everybody sitting here in and around, and technology works. How are you, Chief?
Well, very well. Thanks very much. And I'd like to apologize to the Power family. It has been a dramatic start to the day here in Tanzania. We woke up in Dar es Salaam and took the train that basically traveled over 400 kilometers to arrive at Morogoro. And we just drove through to the Solomon Mahlangu, which were Solomon Mahlangu Freedom College, which was this established high school by the African National Congress in its camp here.
Yeah.
Before you actually arrive at the actual college, there's also a primary school named after Chief Albert Lutuli. So we've just arrived in Morogoro, and there's been a lot of protocols because we're in a company of former President Thabo Mbeki, as well as a plethora of ambassadors, as well as local government leadership here in Tanzania. And there is an elaborate program throughout the day to try and touch base with the different touch spots of the memoriam here in Morogoro. And Morogoro remains largely, a very rural town, much like Musina, maybe as lush as the Toyando, if you want to get a proper picture. But the express that we took here traveled 1 hour 30 minutes in order to arrive here.
Did you say an express? Did you say an express, Mbuyiseni? An express?
Yes, it's an express.
Nice.
It's a speed train from Dar es Salaam that we used to arrive here in the historic town of Morogoro. Of course, I'm with Ambassador Chris Pepani, retired Major General, former Chief of Defense, corporate communications from 1994 to 2003, and also a very senior combatant of Umkhonto weSizwe. I must say, not Umkhonto weSizwe Party. We're also going to have on the show Professor Issa Shivji of the University of Dar es Salaam here on the show to try and tease out this experience. D?
Yeah, we've got Professor Issa Shivji on the line here, and we'll be talking about to the ambassador on your side as well. You'll engage that. I just want to, before we head into the serious stuff, Mbuyiseni, just the interview you would have had with the former ambassador as well on the issue in the United States. Of course, South Africans have been talking about the U.S. visit for quite a while. There have been responses. Yeah, it's a big story in this part of the country, still on social media and everything else. And I've always wondered whether the rest of the world sometimes sees the kind of South African developments and the issues in South Africa as notable or reportable in different countries. How's it been picked up in Tanzania? And, what's been the engagement? Has it made any headlines? Have people been talking about it at all? Or is it just something, Tanzanians have gone on with their life and it's a South African thing?
I think that, certainly we want to bring in Professor Shivji here. Him and the ambassador, we attended yesterday at the University of Dar es Salaam a dialogue that included students and academics here in Tanzania. I think that perhaps we could start with him to reflect precisely on that question. And I think I will also invite the ambassador, because we are South Africans. I think that to develop or arrive at a much more lively, objective assessment of precisely in what way and to what extent is the Tanzanian public, the Tanzanian media following the developments of the tensions of Donald Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa as both heads of states. But I can tell you for free, we have been on the road here, in the train with President Mbeki. We've been on the train as well as in the hall yesterday. And it's been a big conversation and talk amongst us, certainly. But I think let's do precisely that.
Let's ask the Prof.
Please do bring Professor Shivji.
Yeah, Prof.
Yes.
Prof, good morning, and welcome to Power Talk, and welcome to Power 98.7. We do have Mbuyiseni in that beautiful country, and we're here in Johannesburg. Prof, please engage us on that particular question that both Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi and myself have raised.
Yes, on the question of what happened yesterday, I don't think the mainstream papers have picked it up, but in the social media, there have been comments. In fact, while I was sitting in the hall with President Thabo Mbeki, I was receiving messages from some of our comrades, from one of our comrades who was watching the press conference in the Oval, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And when I came back home, it was still on. Let me just give you my reaction. I felt personally very hurt and humiliated, because for us, South Africa and the struggle of ANC was the climax of the struggle for liberation in Africa. And we really looked up to it with great expectations. I can't say, if I may, that our expectations have been totally fulfilled. But what the President of South Africa went through in the Oval Office, in a press conference, was really the height of it. And I've heard a number of people on social media commenting and feeling that they were personally, as Africans, embarrassed. And personally, myself, one thing I did not like was that President Ramaphosa was so defensive, which it did not be. Because the land question, in my view, is a primary question in South Africa. We very well know the liberation of South Africa is incomplete without resolving the land question. So I think that is the view which ought to have been put forward. You cannot have a situation where a minority owns a large portion of land while the majority are landless. This has been since, I believe, 1911, the real problem, a real issue in South Africa. And I always held the view that the land question is a primary question to be resolved before you can say South Africa is completely independent.
Got you. Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi, is there something you want to pick up with the professor on that particular issue? There's a lot to engage about, the other issues of Morogoro and the relationships between Tanzania and South Africa. But on this particular one, is there one that you want to raise with the professor?
No. I think that the professor is quite frankly correct. And I couldn't, as you know, fail to notice the reluctance and the complete inability of the South African delegation to put its policies unequivocally in front of the media, in front of Mr. Donald Trump. But as I said, I'm with the general here, who is also Ambassador Chris Lepan, who is a retired also Major General and former Umkhonto Wesizwe combatant. I don't know if, General, you want to reflect on this Trump question as to, what were your observations about what happened there in the White House?
In the Oval Office, yes. Ambassador? Ambassador, are you with us? Ambassador? we're not quite engaged with the ambassador. Are we? Do we have the ambassador on the line? Mbuyiseni, we're struggling to get the ambassador on the line on this particular side. Okay. Let's yeah, Mbuyiseni, are you still there? Mbuyiseni? Okay, it seems as though the line to Tanzania, Morogoro, has left us. Is Mbuyiseni there on the other side?
D?
Yes, Mbuyiseni, we were struggling to get...
Yes, please proceed, Ambassador.
Yes. Is the ambassador there?
Yes.
Brilliant.
You can proceed, Ambassador.
Yes, good morning. How are you, Power?
Sure. And good morning to you, sir, and welcome to Power 98.7.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
So this question, Ambassador, around your thoughts on what happened at the Oval Office in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I think it was important that there was an opportunity by a South African delegation led by our President Cyril Ramaphosa to meet the President of the United States in order to clear the air and engage them on all the perceptions and the reports that we've been getting both in the public media and privately about exactly what their responses are from their side, so that we can reset the relations between South Africa and United States of America. America, it's an important country. It's one of the powers, and therefore, from an economic point of view, it is critical for South Africa to ensure that we normalize those kind of relations with the United States, irrespective of what reports have been sent to them by some group of individuals about what's happening in our country.
Sure. Ambassador, I'm just going to jump in and ask a question from my side. Mbuyiseni is there with you, and he'll also engage. I want to ask you, you've raised the term reset, and I'm not going to engage the Oval Office anymore. I'm going to now start speaking about the reason why Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi is in Tanzania, and the reason why we've got the two gentlemen on the line with us. Talking about resetting and normalizing and engaging, Ambassador, would you be able to, in context, put the relationship, the formal relationships that South Africa have today, bearing in mind the historical context that we have with Tanzania? We found it extremely important to visit that particular country, to engage in Africa Day in that particular country. We understand the African Union, also the representation there. But South Africa, of course, acknowledges the importance of Tanzania, the historical importance of the relationship we've had. And modern day, relationships, are they as strong and are they as nurtured as they should be?
Relationships with Tanzania and South Africa are quite strong. You'll know that Tanzania is part of SADC region, and of course Tanzania was amongst the first countries in the continent to have gained its independence. And since then, they had made to the disposal, or at the disposal of the South African people, all the assistance for their own liberation. And not only to South Africa and the ANC, to all the liberation movements in our
Absolutely.
region, whether it is Frelimo, whether it is MPLA, whether it is SWAPO, all these organizations, they were assisted by the Tanzanian people.
Yeah. Mbuyiseni?
I thought that then, Ambassador, we then cut to the chase in relation to Morogoro. Morogoro was a camp. Can you take us through what is a camp of a liberation military wing, and why Morogoro? But beyond Morogoro, we use it obviously to reflect on the rest of the other camps that existed in the region. In this case, for the ANC.
Thank you very much for that question. You will recall that prior 1976, South Africa as a country was surrounded by countries that were not, where it was not possible for them to do exactly what Tanzania could do, to do what Angola could do later. And therefore, Angola was a home. Angola was a home to all the young people that left in 1976. And part of those children, men and women who left South Africa after 1976 were sent to Tanzania. Already before the children of 1976 in Tanzania, ANC had opened its offices, and apart from offices, as I indicated, facilities were made available for the young people who did not complete their education, and of course, at some point, military facilities given to the ANC for Umkhonto weSizwe, and some of them were prepared. Selections were made here for people to train abroad in various specialties.
But this training, take us through it in a much more detailed way. How do you structure a camp so that we sort of get a sense of what could have in these years existed here in Morogoro? What happens at the camp?
No, well, in terms of the camp and the camp structure, basically you would have somebody in charge. You would call that person a camp commander. Apart from the camp commander, then you would have a chief of staff, and included as part of the administration, you will have colleagues who would be running the administration, the logistics, the transport, the medical facilities. I'm here describing an ordinary military camp, but important and close to that would be the security of the camp for obvious reasons. So that's a military camp, but you will understand very clearly that not all the facilities were for people who are in the military. You also had closely to that people who were not in the military, because we didn't believe only in people training in arms, training in weapons. We've always known that after tomorrow, South Africa will have to run its own country. So other people quickly went abroad to upgrade their studies in different countries, and certainly preparation was conducted here in Tanzania, particularly in Morogoro.
And Morogoro is also a significant place for important conferences of the ANC. The famous one is 1969, involving Chris Haney's memorandum. It took place here. But you, General, also indicated that there was also a conference of young people of the ANC that elected Jackie Selebi, if I'm not mistaken, in 1981 to be the president of the youth wing.
Yes, it is an emotional question that you are asking, because really, in terms of Morogoro, since 67, 68, when a joint force of Umkhonto weSizwe and ZAPU, which is Zebra, moved for battles into the then Rhodesia. After that, the ANC came together to reassess the situation in the region, to reassess the situation at home. And it was an important element to draw lessons from what happened in the actual battle in then Rhodesia. And therefore the ANC decided that there must be a strategy, there must be tactics that are going to guide the movement going forward in terms of the execution of the armed struggle. So it was an important outcome, and therefore I'm saying it's emotional because some of the people who participated there are no longer with us today. And of course, later, as you say, the generation of 1976, a lot of them that left after 1976, some of them had not completed their education. Then they were assisted here, were assisted by countries from abroad. The Scandinavian countries were assisted by anti-apartheid movement with all the funding, the logistics, and then people were prepared here to further their education. And then later, as the struggle developed at home, then there was this surge of young people leaving and coming home, and it was important, therefore, the youth externally to reorganize itself, to to set up its structures. And myself personally in 1981 participated. Yeah, I was leading the Angolan delegation
To that conference.
at that conference
Let's,
here in Solomon Mahlangu.
Let's hold it there, D. I believe we
Sure.
have to take the
Yes.
headlines and then we'll continue with both our guests.
Sure. We're going to take the headlines on this side. It is 29 minutes to the top of the hour, and immediately after that, we have a team in, of course, Morogoro in Tanzania today. And you've just heard Dr. Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi on the line. They're talking to, of course, the guests that are coming to us from Tanzania, and we're grateful for that as well.
9 a.m. to noon. This is Power Talk on Power 98.7.
Power 98.7 it is. Yes, it is Power 98.7 and Power Talk. My name is Denzel Taylor. Dr. Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi sitting in Morogoro in Tanzania. And of course, we are engaging that particular town that Dr. Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi has nicely pictured for us. If you consider Johannesburg and then you look at Polokwane and you look at Limpopo, more or less the distance in itself would be the same, except that Tanzania has they have a fast train. They have a bullet train between those two cities, and you can get on and hop on. We're still trying to build and trying to work out one between here and Durban. They've already done it, and we can learn a lot. Doc, you're back there, and
Yes.
you probably want to pick up on that conversation again with the ambassador, and then also the prof as well, because I think you want to land that conversation there as well.
Yes, indeed. I just wanted the ambassador to complete this story of the youth, 76 and 81, in relation to the significance of the place called Morogoro. But if you don't mind, General, also maybe paint the presence of the liberation camps in the southern African region.
No, thank you very much. But perhaps one should start from where we are. It's important that this college was named after Solomon Mahlangu. Solomon Mahlangu was a youngster, a product of the 1976 uprising, who left the country in order to take up arms and respond to the protests that were taking place at home when children were being killed in the streets of Soweto, in Mamelodi, Atteridgeville, Langa, Guguletu, and everywhere else. And it's important that on the first anniversary of the Soweto uprisings, he himself with two other of his colleagues were in the center of Johannesburg to get back to be amongst our own people, to start reorganizing. And we know what happened to Solomon Mahlangu later when he got hanged, and we know exactly his standpoint throughout the trial, and he's a fine, or the finest example of the 1976
Yes.
death-defying youth who went back home, and he was hanged. And this center and this place was named after him, the Solomon Mahlangu Freedom College. And I'm sure after this show, when you walk around, you'll also see some remains of not less than 90 plus South Africans who are buried here, who of course some of them died. So it's important that we make that point very, very clear, and the contribution that was made by the Tanzanian government and the international community. Now, coming to your question, you will remember that by 1976, in our own region, we've just had the freedom of Mozambique under Frelimo, and that for the first time, South Africans knew that there were people who achieved their own freedom through what people would call the barrel of the gun. But of course, our struggle was not just the barrel of the gun. It was a combination of mass struggles. It was a combination of underground. It was a combination of the international solidarity and the movement, and of course, using the armed struggle. After many, many years of talking to the regime, when we decided in 1961 to go on with the armed struggle. So in our region, after 1976, like in my with my example, when the first anniversary of Angola in 1976 took place, I was already in Angola. we left the country. We are part of that generation which is normally known as the June 16 detachment. And of course, in Angola, there were few camps that were opened from scratch. And Angola gave everything, gave everything to South Africa for its assistance. And we know ourselves what they went through by counter-revolution, by the apartheid regime and its allies in order to undermine that government. We knew Angola as South Africans then as a firm trench of revolution in Africa.
Okay. This is Power Talk, Bantwana Benkosi. If you've just joined us, we are broadcasting live from Morogoro here at the Solomon Mahlangu Freedom College. Professor Shivji, I together with you participated. I think you would have heard the reflections by the ambassador here on the importance of the youth, the importance of the camps, the importance of the links between Angola, Tanzania, in the sort of liberation struggle, that unity. Yesterday, in the dialogue with President Mbeki and the students of Dar es Salaam, University of Dar es Salaam, he decried the deterioration, as it were, of people's movements, but also the deterioration of the African Union itself. In your assessment, Professor, where do you rate and what's your reaction to that particular assessment by President Mbeki, that this solidarity that constituted the liberation movement driven by Pan-Africanism is almost non-existent today?
Thank you. Thank you very much for raising that question. A question which has concerned me a lot. First, let us reassert and recall that the liberation struggle and the Pan-African solidarity that was shown by our countries and our people was really the high point in the whole African revolution. And that legacy should never be forgotten. A lot of effort has been made by the mainstream media and so on to try to demonize that, but we should always keep it in our mind. And it should be inspiration for our youth. Having said that, our University of Dar es Salaam was in the forefront in supporting the liberation movements. And we used to often get visitors from the liberation movements to engage with us. So for us, it was close to our hearts when we were young at the university. But since then, you are right, that kind of Pan-African solidarity has really been put on the back burner. And I think it is as a result of the way after our post-colonial states consolidated themselves and reduced Pan-African solidarity to some kind of African unity, which meant really the unity of states. And Mwalimu Nyerere was so frustrated with this unity of states that he once called OAU then as a trade union of African leaders. So the Pan-African solidarity, which was essentially solidarity of people to people, was put on the back burner. And we have not quite recovered from there. And that is why I think it is really an important task of the youth to reclaim that Pan-African solidarity. And whatever be the case, there are, I think, young people all over Africa coming together, and that pockets of Pan-African groups. What we have now required to do is to string together these pockets of Pan-African solidarity. This time around, it will be a solidarity of the people. Our Pan-Africanism will be people-centered, not state-centered, because states have let us down when it comes to Pan-African solidarity. So I think the reflection by President Thabo Mbeki on that issue, in my view, I totally subscribe to it. He was right. Now the question is, how do we reignite
Yes.
Pan-African solidarity. Okay? And I think that's a concrete question, but we should be aware of it. And we should always be proud that in Africa, unlike many other continents, we have a very powerful ideology in Pan-Africanism. An ideology which was political, which also gave birth to movement across the continent, and not simply across the continent, but across global Africa. And that is what I think we need to reclaim and reconfigure it. Yesterday, President Thabo Mbeki raised the important question of agency. Who would do it? My personal belief is that this time around, the agency will be working people of Africa. These are the people who will be the base and the anchor for to reclaim Pan-Africanism. Of course, intellectuals, young intelligentsia will have a role to play. But ultimately, they must always remember that the ultimate agency are the working people themselves.
Ambassador, I don't know, but these camps in Angola, in Tanzania, Morogoro here, and other places really in Tanzania, Mozambique, there were missions in Swaziland, in Mozambique, but also in Zambia. What were the relations with the ordinary community members? And to the extent to which you are able to describe this Pan-African spirit being people to people. Did the people of Angola not only appreciate that you are there training and engaging in a struggle at the expense of them being bombed by the apartheid regime? What were the relations between the camps and the ordinary peoples of these countries?
Yeah, that's a very critical question. In terms of the military camps, you will know that there are certain regulations for the people in the military. First, about their existence, where they are.
Yes.
And of course, the military bases were not in the vicinity of communities in these areas for obvious security reasons, because people are conducting training, using arms, using weapons. So most of them were very far from urban centers, were in ideal military areas where you have mountains, rivers, and so forth. So that aspect was important, because even the movement of what we would call guerrillas or freedom fighters was a controlled movement, like in any military base. That if people would be visiting cities, you would have specific reasons for the people to be in those areas. Like, for example, if people get sick within the military base, we don't have enough facilities. We need some medical evacuation of some sort. This would be arranged. But I must say, we were well received in all the countries of Africa by the people of Africa. And I must say that the people of Africa made huge sacrifices in terms of what the response of the regime. You would remember what happened in Mozambique, in Matola, when houses were bombed right in Maputo. You'll remember what happened in Maseru, when the racist regime soldiers, people were killed, even locals died. So I must say it's a huge price for the freedom of South Africa, and of course we were well received in these countries by the local communities, and the ANC itself and its structures had very strong relations between MPLA and the ANC, strong relations between Frelimo and the ANC, and in the process of the villages and areas, soldiers had farms, or not farms really. We were to survive. We had some plowing, planting, vegetables, rearing of animals, And of course, we would, when we have surplus, exchange this thing with the local communities. And of course, sometimes we also, from our logistics, have to send people to go and buy.
But
things.
General, what about marriage? I'm told there are lots of Ntabi sayings here and Vusos, that the General Morogoro camp.
This is inevitable. This is inevitable. Nature takes its
Nature
course.
takes its
It
course.
doesn't have to be here.
So there were lots of marriages here in Morogoro.
I would say
with
a lot of marriages
with the locals.
amongst us, whether it's in Russia, whether it's in London, whether it's in Cuba or in Angola or Zambia. We have a lot of our people who got married to local men or women. I'm an example of that. I got married to a Mozambican lady. Coincidentally, her family also was 100% behind what we're doing. Her father was assisting in the ferrying of weapons from Maputo to
But
South
why
Africa.
do you call it victim, General? It's love. It's love.
Yeah, well, it's love, but this was not our first mission into these countries.
Yeah. So in Mozambique, and I want to also specifically pay this close attention to Swaziland. Were there camps in Swaziland?
No, what happens in the region? We had to adapt. We had to ensure that those countries are safeguarded, that the South African apartheid regime does not have an excuse. This was a clear position of the late President Oliver Tambo, that we will not risk those countries by being seen to be having military bases like in Angola, by being seen, because some of those countries really also were depending on South Africa. So it was important that our activities are kept underground. For the better part of my stay in Swaziland, I didn't walk during the day. We're operating at night. And
So there was
we had
no
safe houses.
camp
We
in the sense
we
like
wouldn't have
Morogoro.
camp like in Morogoro. We didn't have camps like in Angola. We were operating under different circumstances, that people were underground, we have safe houses. But training was taking place in those places. If you came for an Easter weekend and you are a sympathizer, we would quickly give you a training in 3 days of how to handle a pistol, how to how to do a number of things inside the country.
Weapons assembly and
All
disassembly.
those kind of things.
I see.
But the most important thing, to organize inside the camp, because we've always believed in South Africa that the people were our mountains. It is important that we mobilize the people, we organize the people. These are the people who then would give safe houses to our guerrillas when they come back home, because they don't go back to their own homes.
Professor Fiji, one of the big impediments to the current generation in thinking about this mission of African unity, African cooperation, of African Pan-Africanism, as it were, is the borders, but also the criminality. Certainly, people like in South Africa cry about the porous borders and the many ways in which they become conduits of things like illicit financial flows, sometimes human trafficking, but also they allow criminals to perform horrendous crimes, then simply go away. And that sort of undermines in the discourse the idea of thinking about African unity, African cooperation, because on the ground that's what people are experiencing. And you would have seen this, Prof, that it came up from the richest man in South Africa at the White House yesterday, speaking about the problem of what he called foreign aliens. How do we respond to this question of the criminality associated with the question of porous borders?
Yeah, I mean, that is true. That is true. But I think not in all cases, but very often it is used as an excuse to keep fellow Africans out. Our borders are porous, yes, but there are people from outside the continent who move freely to our countries. They do not even have visa problems that we have. Okay? So I think that should be clearly considered. And secondly, don't forget that during our colonial period, during apartheid South Africa, there was movement of people, kind of forced movement as migrant labor from one country to another. There were Tanganyikans, for example, working in South African mines, and vice versa. So there was that movement already. Now, after our independence, we should have built on that movement to try to bring about some kind of unity of people. And that, I think, is a responsibility of the leaders, rather than use the people and the other Africans in your country as an excuse to you not being able to solve certain problems in the country. So I think that is important to keep in mind. I believe that for any genuine Pan-African unity among the people, there should be free movement of Africans on the continent. I think that is important. That does not mean that you leave your borders porous altogether, but it does mean that you differentiate in how you treat people. Fellow Africans should be treated differently. Okay? And that's the only way we can really build Pan-African solidarity. Yeah. And this is extremely important for the youth. I think our young people should be able to move freely across the border, as it is. As it is. For example, if you take Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, people move across our borders, whether you like it or not. And people move without passports because our ethnic groups were divided by these borders which were drawn by the colonial government. Yes. These borders are not, these boundaries are very artificial. They cut across ethnic groups, they cut across cultural groups. And therefore you find the same people living on two sides of the border. For example, Tanganyika and Rwanda, Tanganyika and Burundi, and so on and so forth. See? So we must remember that these boundaries are not boundaries created by us. They are boundaries created by the colonial government. And that specific purpose for doing so was the process that divided our people. Now, if you are talking about Pan-African solidarity, then we cannot continue to reinforce that division which we inherited from colonialism.
Prof, I gotta ask, myself here and the ambassador have been talking about how clean Tanzania is. We've moved from the urban center, Dar es Salaam, and now we are here in the deep, relatively rural Morogoro. And it's just clean. The country is clean. It's not even some super high-tech, skyscraper-ridden country like, say, the United States and all of that, but it is clean. How did you get it right as a people?
First, I want to say a word or two about Morogoro region, because Morogoro is quite dear to me. So I was born in Kilosa, which is part of Morogoro. And as a young boy, for us to go to Morogoro was going to a big capital. So that was our city. We rarely came to Dar es Salaam, but we often traveled to Morogoro. That's number one. Number two, Morogoro is a very rich, fertile area of Tanzania. It's one of the most fertile areas where we had very productive farms. And that whole region is a region where sisal was grown, for example. It used to be our main export crop during the colonial period. Now, to say, I heard the ambassador, and I'm very glad I also learned more. We knew about the camp, the ANC camp in Morogoro. But for reasons which the ambassador has explained so well, obviously, these military camps which involve training of the freedom fighters could not be in the communities. But the communities knew about it. That's number one. And number two, they were supportive of it. They were supportive of it because the Tanzanian leadership under Mwalimu Nyerere never failed to explain to the people that freedom of South Africa, freedom of Mozambique, freedom of Angola, freedom of Namibia are part of our freedom. None of our countries is independent and free unless our brothers and sisters in other African countries are also free. And our people internalized it. They understood it. So they are supportive of it. And that great sacrifices, as Ahmed said, as rightly put down. Don't forget that when Nelson Mandela came out of the prison in 1994, the first country visited was Tanzania. Mm-hmm. By that time, Mwalimu had already stepped down from the presidency. And it was a great event. It was so memorable that my daughter, who was very young at that time, still remembers it. So, this is something that I feel we ought to build on. But I'm afraid to say that we have really squandered that opportunity.
Sure.
And therefore I've been saying and emphasizing that we have to reclaim it.
Okay. Unfortunately, we've reached the top of the hour and the end of Power Talk, and I'm going to now hand over back to Dee. Thank you very much. From the future here, Dee in Morogoro, this is Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi.
Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, and also get ready when you return to the country. You will pay more for various things, alcohol, smokes, and your petrol. So get ready for that. We've had the budget yesterday. That's been a live broadcast from Johannesburg here, Power 98.7, and then Morogoro in Tanzania. We tend to repeat it tomorrow with a live broadcast from Tanzania with, of course, Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi in that particular country, bringing us developments as we also celebrate this week, Africa Day.